Nights at 5 and 10 on Nashville's Channel 2.
From ABC News. This week with David Brinkley. Now from our Washington headquarters, here's David Brinkley.
By this time next week, we'll all know who won the presidency and by how much, who will control the 99th Congress, and so we'll have some rough, very rough idea of what to expect out of Washington in the next 4 years. By this time next week, there will have been restrained and unrestrained expressions of pleasure in victory, and a good deal of weeping and moaning among the losers contemplating just where they went wrong. To look ahead to next Tuesday and beyond, our guest today is George Bush, Vice President of the United States and a candidate for 4 more years in the same office, with his thoughts on the winners and losers and the outlook for the next 4 years. Some background from our man John Martin, and our discussion here with George Will, Sam Donaldson, and Tom Wicker, all here on our Sunday program. First, a little news. A new ABC News Washington Post poll, probably the biggest poll of its kind ever taken, shows the Reagan-Bush ticket ahead by 18 points in the popular vote, 57 to 39. It shows Reagan leading in 47 states, Mondale leading in none, with 3 states, Hawaii, Rhode Island, and Washington, too close to call. Details from ABC's Barry Serafin. Barry?
The new poll shows President Reagan leading among both men and women, all age and income groups, and in all regions of the country. A month ago, just before the first presidential debate, Mr. Reagan led by 18 points, 55% to 37% for Walter Mondale. Then the gap narrowed to 15 points, then 12, and just before the final debate, a 10-point margin. But then the incumbent's lead began to grow again to 12 points, and now in this latest survey of registered voters, Mr. Reagan has regained his 18-point lead, with 57% to 39% for Mondale, with only 4% undecided. More importantly, as of now, President Reagan is out in front just about everywhere. He has a firm lead in 40 states, representing 428 electoral votes. 7 others, including Mondale's home state of Minnesota and Geraldine Ferraro's home state of New York, are leaning toward Mr. Reagan. Altogether, the states that appear to be in the Reagan column at this point add up to 517 electoral votes, nearly double the number needed to win. 3 states, Hawaii, Washington, and Rhode Island, are rated as toss-ups, and Mondale is firmly out in front only in the District of Columbia with just 3 electoral votes. Mr. Reagan is attracting about 1/4 of the Democratic voters we surveyed. Mondale appears to be siphoning off only 7% of the Republicans. Independents favor the incumbent 63% to 32%. Both parties have worked feverishly to register new voters, but Mr. Reagan leads among them, too, 58% to Mondale's 38%. GOP incumbents are hoping for a ride on Reagan coattails in close congressional races. In some of the hottest Senate contests, our poll shows the Iowa race between Republican Roger Jepsen and Democratic challenger Tom Harkin too close to call. In North Carolina, a slim 3-point lead for GOP incumbent Jesse Helms over Governor James Hunt, a gap well within the margin of error. And in Illinois, an 8-point lead for Charles Percy over Democratic Congressman Paul Simon. President Reagan and Vice President Bush have reverted to their original strategy of looking beyond their own race and trying to boost GOP chances in both houses of Congress. Incumbency is usually the strongest factor in congressional races, and that would tend to favor the Democrats. But as of now, our poll indicates that Mr. Reagan's prospects could have some beneficial spillover for Republicans on Capitol Hill. Barry Serafin, ABC News, New York.
President Reagan says in a newspaper interview that in a second term, if he wins one, he will not accept any increase in personal income taxes. He told a Little Rock, Arkansas Democrat he is interested in a simplified tax structure, preferably one that will collect some of the $100 billion now lost to cheaters in the underground economy, and he hopes even to lower individual tax rates. Mondale, meanwhile, is accusing the president of planning a secret, tough, rough tax plan to be sprung on the public after the election is over. In Poland, a report this morning that Father Popieluszko brutally tortured and murdered before he was put away in Poland. In Lebanon, a group called the Islamic Jihad, or Holy War, claims responsibility for the bombing attacks on Americans in 3 places in Lebanon, and says now it is planning more attacks within the next 2 days. And there's an election of sorts in Nicaragua, which the U.S. government calls a sham, because opposition parties are denied a fair chance to vote. We'll be back with our guest, Vice President Bush, and all the rest of today's program in a moment.
This Week with David Brinkley, brought to you by General Electric. At GE, we bring good things to life.
The GE 2800 dishwasher. It does almost everything but clear the table. GE, we bring good things to life.
How many remember now, if any, how many remember that early this year there were polls showing that John Glenn, head-to-head, could beat President Reagan in November? Others showed Walter Mondale beating him, but not as bad. So, it's been a long year. Before we ask questions of today's guests, Vice President Bush, some background on how we have moved from that point to this point from John Martin. John?
In these next 48 hours, David, it will be easy to forget that we're watching the end of a process that started far more than a year ago under some very different assumptions. So it's a good time, perhaps, to see how far we've come.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
Just a year ago, we saw a president who seemed not nearly so invincible as he seems this morning. In a series of 7 surveys by ABC News and The Washington Post this year, John Glenn defeated Ronald Reagan 6 of 7 times by as many as 13 percentage points. Walter Mondale defeated Ronald Reagan 5 of 7 times by as many as 9 points. Beyond the polls, there were assumptions. Unless Ronald Reagan removed the Marines from Beirut, which he had said would be giving in to Soviet pressure, and unless he acted in a more conciliatory manner toward the Soviets than his speeches and accusations suggested he would, the president seemed vulnerable.
I think 45% at the beginning of the year said they had a fear that Ronald Reagan would get us into a war. At the end of the year, we now have 61% who have that same feeling. So there's a growing uncertainty.
But Mr. Reagan reassured them. Predictably, he pulled out the Marines. Unpredictably, perhaps, he met with Soviet Foreign Minister Andrei Gromyko. Another assumption. Walter Mondale's labor endorsements might help him recapture blue-collar Democrats who voted for Ronald Reagan in 1980, but feared the deficit might create another recession.
Mr. Reagan will raise taxes, and so will I. He won't tell you. I just did.
But Mr. Reagan turned the deficit issue against Mr. Mondale by recasting it. Faith and optimism that the economy would outgrow the massive debt versus pessimism and despair.
Tonight in New Hampshire, we buried the label Dark Horse.
There were surprises. No one foresaw the rise of Gary Hart. Some then expected the young and upwardly mobile to find him appealing, but did not expect to see a switch from Hart to Reagan, or to see some of the youngest voters attracted to the oldest candidate. Some assumptions were correct. After the 1983 off-year elections,
There was, for example, a very large turnout of black voters. And so what is that going to do in 84?
I think it shows that Jesse Jackson has a potential for being an even more powerful influence than we thought a couple of weeks ago.
The question is will Reagan's demonstrated capacity to enrage black voters in some ways be counterbalanced by Jackson's capacity for turning up the temperature on the Democratic Party.
Blacks did respond to the Reverend Jackson, but so did whites. And the latest assumption is that Ronald Reagan gained as much strength from whites for racial or other reasons as Walter Mondale later gained among blacks. Finally, 10 months ago, some people assumed there might be a new element this year.
I think we are coming to the point where sooner or later, and sooner rather than later, a Democratic nominee in particular is going to think that nominating a woman will help him.
I agree with you, Tom. I don't think it'll happen this time, although it might. But it will by 88.
I think there's one thing to be remembered here, and that is that there remain an awful lot of men in this country, and a lot of women, as demonstrated by the vote on the ERA, who would be put off by a woman for a vice presidential candidacy.
Let me say that again. This is an exciting choice.
The Ferraro selection focused more attention on the vice presidential candidates than ever before.
Let me help you with the difference, Ms. Ferraro, between Iran and the embassy in Lebanon.
It also focused more attention on the man who found himself running for the first time against a woman for the vice presidency. George Bush faced the difficult task of demonstrating his support and agreement with the president while retaining his own identity as a former ambassador, CIA director, and member of Congress.
Of course I support the president's economic program, and I support him in everything else. President, given the facts to Gromyko and all of these nuclear meetings, excellent. Right on top of that subject matter.
The vice president has been ridiculed as patronizing, quoted in a Doonesbury cartoon as having put his manhood in a blind trust. His remarks about Lebanon touched off the angriest moment of this campaign.
And for somebody to suggest, as our two opponents have, that these men died in shame.
Mr. Bush, apologize today for that remark.
I refer to the dictionary definition of humiliation as shame, disgrace, and degradation.
Democrats never got an apology and do not seem to have gained ground from it. In fact, the Reagan lead over Mr. Mondale is assumed to be far bigger than another Republican held just 36 years ago. Political reporter Richard Strout remembers calling Harry Truman's defeat as certain as anything can be in American politics.
And everybody liked him, but they didn't get together, and then the election came, and everybody went to the polling booth, and they said, well, the poor little guy has got to be defeated, so I'm going to give him one vote, you see. And so they went out, and that one vote elected him.
But the assumption this morning is that Ronald Reagan's re-election is as certain as anything can be in American politics. And the question is, what shape will the Congress and the country take in the coming 4 years? David?
John, thank you. Coming next, our guest, the Vice President, George Bush. In a moment.
Did you hear AT&T has introduced something rather radical? The Reach Out America plan. Calling anywhere in the United States weekends or nights is just $10 an hour. The next is even less. So you can see how far your money goes. Quite ingenious, really. They even have a number for ordering. 1-800-551-3131. Reach Out America. They may be on to something.
AT&T. The more you hear, the better we sound.
These Midwestern farmers believe in giving everyone a fair deal, and they expect one in return. They've always gotten along with the travelers on that score. And last year we gave farmers like Tom and Harvey a deal that they thought was more than fair. The travelers offered them a customized farm and ranch policy that gave them better coverage for their money. Ask them if they think the travelers deals fairly. We're pretty sure they'd say, yep. At the Travelers, we believe fairness is good business.
Watch your vote count with Peter Jennings and David Brinkley.
And joining us, Barbara Walters, Tom Wicker, George Will, and all the people of ABC News.
They've brought you the 84 campaigns, and they'll be here election night.
We're with you.
Mr. Vice President, thank you very much for coming in. Pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you, sir.
Here with us are George Will of ABC News and Sam Donaldson, ABC News White House correspondent. Mr. Vice President, you and Mr. Reagan have not, may I say, been terribly forthcoming about what you will do in the next 4 years if you win. What can we expect?
I think you can expect
us to do everything we can to keep the economic recovery going until it benefits everyone. And there are some who clearly want to work that don't have jobs, and we are concerned about that. And I think we'll do it by staying on the same track we're on, controlling the growth of spending more, keeping the growth going, streamlining in the sense that I think you'll see an active push for some of the Grace Commission recommendations. And that'll be the tack we'll stay on. We started off early on with a decentralization approach, and I think we're going to continue that thrust. I don't think our job of simplification of regulations is finished. So we're on the right track, and that's the objective, is to sustain the recovery so everyone benefits. And then on the war and peace side, or the foreign affairs side, I think that has become very clear what the president wants now, much clearer, incidentally, when the campaign started, and that is a success in reduction of tensions east and west, and he is committed to verifiable arms reductions in 4 forums, 4 different areas. And so that's a full agenda, but that's the main thing we'll be looking to try to do.
Mr. Vice President, the big savings in the Grace Commission to which you just referred involve policy questions with big constituencies out there. I think the biggest saving proposed by that report was a 3-year saving of $400-some billion by reducing federal pensions. You're not going to do anything like that,
I said some, but I think there's things like multi-year contracting that have substantial price tags, and we run up against some legislative objections. So I don't know exactly which ones we'll push and which we won't, but some will obviously be impossible, and some we wouldn't want to touch.
When Mr. Mondale challenged the president on the subject of Social Security, the president quickly responded after the first debate, saying he never, under any circumstances, would reduce benefits for anyone, anytime. That leaves out the question of Medicare. Do you expect, because Medicare has not received such a pledge, that will be a target?
I don't think it'll be a target, and one thing that's happening, I was traveling in this campaign with Barbara Conable and Bill Gradison, who were 2 Republicans on the Ways and Means Committee, and they feel that the Medicare problem is less acute than I had thought it was. But we will, and one of the reasons is we've done better in containing future costs. So we're going to keep on that, but I think anything that is done on it will have to be done the way we saved the Social Security system, through a bipartisan commission. But there's less urgency, I'm pleased to say, than I had thought there was several months ago.
In these final days of the campaign, your campaign is running an ad in which the president says he wants to cut taxes again, make them even lower. Do you expect that?
Well, he feels strongly about reducing the rates further. He also feels strongly about getting some kind of a tax simplification system, and we're awaiting a report from the Treasury. I noticed that in the last desperate days of campaigning, that the opposition alleged that this meant we were going to raise taxes or to cut out real estate deductions and things of that nature, which isn't true.
But you don't expect the federal government to operate on a smaller share of the gross national product than it has today?
I don't think that's what's envisioned.
Mr. Vice President, let's stay on taxes. You just talked about not raising the marginal rates. The President has said that frequently. Is it clear that what you and Mr. Reagan are saying, though, is that taxes in any form, as collected by the federal government, will not go up under a second Reagan administration?
That's our objective.
Well, that's
I got
your
into
objective.
a little trouble last year because, I think maybe with you, Sam, out on the West Coast.
Santa Barbara.
You remember the day?
I do indeed.
And I spent a week
every time he's been in trouble.
Well, I don't know who was in
David,
trouble.
I don't remember
I like
that
to
many
think it
times.
was me, and I don't think Sam thought he was in trouble. But I made some statement like "never say never" or something of that nature, and attributed that to the president. And it took a week of scurrying around, being chased by all those felt-tip covered booms every time you turned around, and it finally came out that we weren't apart. And so I will just leave it where it is. And we have no intention of raising taxes, and we believe if we go forward with the things I've just said to Mr. Brinkley here, that we can be successful.
Mr. Vice President, what you said struck many people that day as being very reasonable. As I recall, you said that a president should not foreclose his options in a matter like this. And yet, very shortly thereafter, his options and your options were quickly foreclosed, And what you've been saying now to the American people...
Where were they quickly? I don't mean to be argumentative on your show, but where were they quickly foreclosed?
Well, within 4 or 5 days, Larry Speakes, the president's press secretary, conducted an interview with the president and gave us written questions that he had asked Mr. Reagan. Mr. Reagan's written replies, which said very strongly, no tax increase. I'm not preserving my options. But my question really comes down to it. Why not be sensible in that respect and say, look, we don't want a tax increase. Well, we've got to have the option if conditions require it.
Well, Sam, I'm going to leave it. I'm not going to get back into the middle of a fight that I didn't think really needed to be fought, because I think the president and I are in the same place. I think he said never say never, but I think he is now being projected at the last minute of a campaign by the opposition as though he's going to go ahead with some secret plan to raise taxes again, and he's not. So I'm going to leave it right there.
Well,
and ask you to refer it to him. Next time you get a shot at him, ask that question of him. I learned a good lesson out in Santa Barbara, and that is don't try to fine-tune somebody else's view.
We do ask him, as you know, regularly, and his position used to be, I thought, that he was not going to raise taxes unless, and then he'd go into a little diagram in which he said we had made all the cuts we possibly could, and still there was a gap between what we needed and what we had cut, and then we might have to adjust taxes. And yet, a couple of days ago, he said, I'll raise taxes over my dead body. So I'm really not clear what he means.
Well, I don't want to show a lack of manhood here in the last 48 hours, but I'd refer you to the traveling White House, wherever it may be, right this very minute. I can't help you anymore. I tried once, and wow.
Well, is it because you don't want to hear more about that?
But because I don't want to know any more about it or discuss it anymore.
I have to interrupt for a moment. We'll be back with more questions for Vice President Bush in a moment.
For the 3rd year in a row, the winner of the Crawford County Hop Calling Contest is my own dear wife, Dottie Mason.
Hi, I'm Merlin Olson, here to tell you how your FTD florist can help to make someone's big day even better. With the Tickler Bouquet, a fun, inexpensive way to please someone you think is pretty special.
For you, my little songbird.
The Tickler Bouquet from FTD. It says so much and costs so little.
This Remington microscreen shaves as close as a blade or your money back. Look, no cord. It's rechargeable. It never needs a cord because this convenient charger stand keeps it continually charged. The Remington microscreen shaves as close as a blade or your money back. Here's why. The first screen shaves incredibly close. The second screen even closer. The Remington microscreen rechargeable shaver shaves as close as the blade or your money back. And the Lady Remington rechargeable, the perfect gift, shaves without a cord.
This Week with David Brinkley will continue in a moment.
Burt Reynolds and Dolly Parton, the best little whorehouse in Texas, Sunday.
A bright new idea from the Drapery House. Graber vertical blinds for fingertip light control that'll change your view of the world. Put Graber vertical blinds on any window or sliding glass door for just the light touch. Ideal with or without custom draperies. Drapery House also offers the popular horizontal 1-inch mini blinds in 168 colors. Call the Drapery House, where you'll find service with integrity.
I'm Joe Simpkins. Bart Gordon and I are very different. I'm against the Mondale tax hike and for voluntary prayer amendment. I'm for Lamar Alexander's master teacher program. Bart Gordon's against it. Our issues are different. Our backgrounds are different. Our lifestyles are different. Even our values are different. I'm a veteran. He's not. I'm a National Guardsman. He's not. I'm married and a family man. He's not. So if you want a congressman who agrees with your issues and lives by your values, I'm asking for your vote.
Election Coordinator David Collins, Monday morning at 6.
We are back. Mr. Vice President, without any particular reference to Sam Donaldson and Santa Barbara, do you feel you have been treated badly by the press this year?
No.
I knew you were going to say no, but you can't possibly have liked all of what has been said about your manhood being put in blind trust and this and that.
But if you'd have phrased your question differently and said by all of the press, I'd have said no. But by the press, yes. We've done 200, I looked it up in anticipation of a question of this nature. We have done 250 one-on-one interviews since Labor Day, 5-minute sectors mostly, and some print ones longer than that. 250. And the resulting exposure and press that came from those has been excellent. The endorsements have been overwhelmingly, obviously, for the president, but I get the old nice mention once in a while. And so, basically, I have no complaints. Now, if you want to be specific in, you know, some one or two editorials right here in this town, one of them was pretty ugly. Yeah. One of them was very ugly.
It said you run a terrible campaign?
Kind of uncharacteristically ugly. Well, they can have a judgment as to whether I'm a good campaigner or not. Fortunately, many people in the Republican Party, at least, would disagree with that. But I don't know, there is kind of there's something different about it, David, and I'm not saying I'm error-free. I don't think I'm error-prone, but there's been a little personal thing, and I think there'll be a lot of analysis after this as to why. But basically, I have no complaints because our message has gotten out, and where we go, we're well received, and it really has been a very upbeat thing.
Well, a political ticket running 18 points ahead really has very little ground for complaint, wouldn't you say?
Well, I would agree with that, and if those polls prove to be right, and some of it stems from opposition charges. It's not journalists that are unfair, although I guess I'm entitled to editorialize on that in my heart of hearts.
You can even do it outright here, if you want
to. If you're really interested.
I am, go ahead.
You know, after the debate, I thought I won the debate. And our people were ecstatic after the debate with Ferraro. And the polls showed definitively, I think in this case, that I won the debate. And yet, the spin merchants didn't, but you'd expect that. I mean, we'd rush out and say if it was something was a disaster, if I'd have been, gee, didn't Bush do well? So her people were out doing that. But I think there was some little less enthusiasm among many of the commentators about how well it had gone, and I think it had gone well. And, you know, I think most people in the country see it as having gone well, and they're saying, hey, how come the commentators missed that? Now, I asked somebody about the Ferraro campaign, and they said, well, no, she really feels she won the debate, so I admit that I'm not objective. This is a subjective judgment.
But a lot of people in this town who know you and like you have been among your most severe critics because they're saying that's not the George Bush we've seen in private. That there's something, I know this is getting dangerously aesthetic in judging your campaign, but there's a kind of thinness, a kind of shrillness, a kind of instability almost. Do you think that you've put your best face to the country in this campaign?
Yes, especially in that debate. But some, George, we don't want to be overly personal, felt the debate went quite different than the people felt. Some are out campaigning with us, and I think, generally speaking, the reception has been very, very good, but some who haven't been pick up a columnist or cartoonist and use that as a response. So I don't know. I'm not suggesting that I've done it perfectly. And if I was going to have a mea culpa here, I'd make a list of things that I might do differently. I think I won't share that with you.
Well, let me ask, I'm going to get you to try to do that, because having asked about the aesthetics of campaigning, let me ask about the ethics. A lot of people, myself included, thought you're just wrong in what you said that your opponents had said about the Marines dying in shame. Why doesn't a candidate, why didn't you particularly say, hey, I got it wrong? Let's go on to the next
Because I didn't think I did get it wrong.
Really?
And I still don't think I got it wrong. And I know you feel differently about that. And I know Mr. Mondale keeps talking about apologies, and the fifth, I think, between the two of them, calling for apologies on one subject or another. And I'm very sorry. I don't share his view, nor yours, about that statement. Now, do I wish I hadn't said it? Probably. Why? Because here I'm sitting talking to a person that I hold in high regard who feels I've done something fundamentally wrong. I don't think so.
Mr. Vice President, Mondale said yesterday there is a deep character flaw in this person that is apparent to the American people. And he cited a number of instances. If you'd like to respond first to his general characterization, fine, but then I'd like to cite the instances.
I couldn't be less interested in what Mr. Mondale, in desperation, is saying. He said ugly things about the president. He said ugly things about me. And then I say to myself, well, look, he's carrying a heck of a burden here. He's under tremendous fire. And if there's ever a time for somebody in political life not to respond and not to be overly critical, even when he gets pretty personal, this is the time.
Well, one of the things he cites are the ugly personal things you and your people have said about Geraldine Ferraro. You said you'd kicked her ass. Your press
Now, wait a
secretary
minute.
called her bitchy. Go ahead.
I didn't say that.
I don't want to interrupt you. Go ahead.
I
What
didn't-
did you say?
Well, I've never said it in public. Now let me
You
just
did,
recite.
Mr. Vice President. It was recorded on a news camera, which was there, and you knew it was
Which
there.
was eavesdropping in a conversation, if you want my opinion. I was
Sir, you were
whispering
in
into
public
the
with
ear.
the press around you.
Well, if I'd wanted to say in public the statement that I have never repeated, put it that way, I would do it. You've just said it in public. And a lot of
I
other
was
people
quoting you,
have,
sir.
and you see signs all over the place. I'm not denying that I said it to that person, but I am denying I meant it for public consumption. And leave out me for a minute. My wife felt the same way. And then to have an opposition campaign in desperation try to rip her into some kind of a conspiracy is absolutely patently absurd and grossly unfair. And anyone, I hope, that knows me, and I hope that knows my wife, know that we would not participate in such. But it's a meaningless thing.
I didn't
and what
bring
do
up
I,
your
may I
wife.
finish?
Certainly.
But the point is, the American people are not fooled by it. If they were, why would every poll show me head-on-head moving ahead and her going down if it had been so offensive or there had been such a visible flaw of character? Sam, there isn't. And there's no change in me, for better or for worse. I may be the same kind of guy that I was, and it hasn't changed
Well,
a bit.
I didn't bring up your wife, but I did bring up your press secretary, Mr. Teeley, who said of Ms. Ferraro, she's bitchy. Why would he say that?
But you didn't bring up Tony Coelho, who used exactly the same word in saying what she shouldn't be in the debate.
If he were sitting here, I would bring it up.
Well, you'll have a chance then, for that, but you're not going to get it from me.
All right.
And,
my time is up for this round, but I do have
No,
some other...
go ahead, Sam.
Well,
One more.
David, I have some
I'm just
more
gonna interrupt
things to
briefly.
cite, which I think I better
All right.
save to the third
All right,
round.
we'll get back to it in a moment. We'll be back with more questions for the Vice President in a moment.
Behind this name, there's a world you may never have known existed before. Not only Whirlpool washers, dryers, and refrigerators, but our latest energy-efficient dishwashers, technically advanced ranges, and microwave ovens, convenient trash compactors, freezers, room air conditioners, central heating and cooling systems too. All backed by the Whirlpool promise of good, honest quality. Whirlpool major home appliances, designed to make your world a little easier.
I spent my whole life working on cures for cancer, miracle fibers, synthetic fuels, space-age plastics, and 100 other wonders of modern technology. You see, they all have one thing in common: brains. You build better brains, and before long, you get better mousetraps. Morning, class.
Simeon Holloway.
Pop quiz.
Isn't he the kind of teacher you want teaching your kids? So does the NEA.
Tomorrow, an exciting matchup on Monday Night Football when the Atlanta Falcons take on the 83 NFC Conference champion Redskins. This game could make or break the season for Washington as they fight to stay in their heated division race. Action begins tomorrow live at 9 Eastern on ABC.
Now, Sam, you've got more 3x5 cards you took out of your shoebox that you want to
Well,
go through here.
these are things that I think people want to hear the Vice President respond to. A couple of days ago in New York, you made the following statement. America is back with pride, prosperity, and patriotism, and there are a lot of idiots who don't understand it. Who are the idiots?
This was in New Jersey, not New York, minor correction. And secondly, I was being harassed by 6 ineffective, I will admit, hecklers, one of whom was very quietly and kind of covertly sending a familiar Nelson Rockefeller gesture at me. And I felt inclined to categorize them in that way. But it tells you something about the press, because then for the next 2 days, I'm going around getting questions shouted at me. Hey, do you mean all people that support Mondale already? No, I didn't mean that. Well, do you think that everybody was there that wasn't for you? No, I didn't mean that. What are you talking about? I was talking about those 6 people standing there that kind of, I didn't appreciate much their approach to
Well,
it.
these things arise, sir, not only because of the language, I suppose, but because of something you said on this program. You talked in a moment ago to George and answered his question in terms of what the American people, think. And it suggests that people who oppose you and Mr. Reagan, in your mind, you say are out of step with the American people, are something else than the American people.
No, not exact. No, what I'm talking about is majorities coming out. I think I was talking about the debate, and I think the record shows I won the debate. But being very, and Sam, I don't want to get too personal here 48 hours before an election, but your analysis was quite different. as I recall, having my wife having made me watch to see whether I was flailing around too much in the debate, watch the tape, and yours was quite different in terms of what the people, or the majority of the people, if you prefer that, said about who won the debate. That's the only point I'm trying to make.
Well, just like you, I don't take a public opinion poll before I give my views.
Yeah.
But that night, John Chancellor of NBC began, I understand, by saying, let's get one thing straight. George Bush won this hands down.
That was an astute observation.
Some of our people did. I happen to think Ms. Ferraro did very well. But your analysis of the debate is certainly acceptable to me.
Okay.
But these things that I bring up are things that are being raised. You said, for instance, in talking about Mr. Mondale, he raised this in terms of the character flaw, that you have misrepresented his positions. And the question becomes, do you know that you're misrepresenting them?
Well, give me an example, yeah.
Let me cite the three instances that the Washington Post brought up in a recent article and let you respond. It says that on the trail, and I haven't been covering, as you know, that you've said Mondale plans drastic cuts in the defense budget when in fact he plans a 4% increase, that he would do away with the modernization of our bomber program when in fact he supports the stealth program, and that he calls the Nicaraguan leaders liberals when in fact he has only called them leftists. Now,
all right, may I respond?
Please do, sir.
All right, defense. His cuts below what we'd have are dramatic. He would get rid of the MX. He'd get rid of the B-1, which takes care of my concerns about, at least in the short run, modernization of our bomber program. And yet I know what the story you said. And it was almost like I was debating this columnist from the Washington Post. I've made my statement. The president's made his statement. Mondale would cut substantially below what we've projected for defense. That's substantial defense cuts. He comes back and says, how can he say that? I'd raise it 4%. Now, if we're going to go back on that, how can he say we've made great cuts in AFDC and in food stamps when we've raised them? I mean, I'm sorry, I don't consider that a character flaw. I consider him to be totally defensive and on the wrong side of the issue. What was the third one?
I brought up, I want my colleagues to have a chance.
I want to ask you this, Mr. Bush, going beyond these immediate questions of today's campaigning. You and your father grew up in the moderate Republican Party in the Northeast, which was then, as you know, rooted in Wall Street and the financial community and so on, of Dewey, Rockefeller, so on. Now the Republican Party has moved southward, westward, has become more conservative, and hasn't it really left you behind?
David, I moved to Texas in 1948. I was 21 or 2 years old. I'd already been there before the war. I don't fit comfortably into the mold that some would have you. And I'm very proud of my father. I'm proud of his record. But I don't think the party's left anybody behind. You see, because I don't believe that it's exclusionary. I know some do, but I think there's plenty of room for divergence in our party. And I don't believe for a minute the charge is that the party is getting smaller and smaller because it's pushing people out. I've never seen it more unified than it is today, and I've been involved in it since 1952.
People in the Republican Party who say you are much too moderate for their taste now.
Well, that's their judgment.
All right. George?
And they may be right, and they may be wrong.
Do you think Walter Mondale's the strongest candidate the Democrats could have put up this year?
I hope so. I don't know. George, I just don't know the answer to that. I give him great credit for slugging through those primaries and hanging in there and tenaciously fighting for what he believed. And when you come out tested by fire, I guess you'd have to say yes.
We've got about 2 days left and about 4 minutes left here. Just what do you think of your opponents? I mean, it must be hard to keep this in perspective. Mondale, a good guy. Ferraro,
everyone that knows Mondale tells me he's a good guy. I got friends here who were more of his political persuasion than my own, and they tell me he's a very decent fella, very good person. And I'll tell you, on Ferraro, after the debate, when I went up and shook hands, and I said to her, very nice closing, and, you know, the tension was up there, and met the kids and stuff, and she couldn't have been more pleasant. So there's nothing personal with me in it. I'm a little surprised at some of the personal attacks, therefore, that I've resisted.
The second guessing has begun a bit. You're a Texan. Some people say, had Mondale picked Benson, Texas senator, traditional Southerner, they'd be running a lot tougher race today. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
May I just ask you about that Doonesbury thing, that cartoon? which says that you have placed your manhood in a blind trust. I guess it's a spoof at what some see as this great loyalty to the president beyond just a loyalty, but something cheerleading. How do you respond to that?
I respond by saying I've never in my life, David generously mentioned my father, my sons, my daughter, I'd throw into this. We don't consider in our family loyalty to be a character defect.
But I mean, do you think this attack is beyond fair comment?
Yes. But okay. I don't get troubled by it because I know what I am, know what I believe, know how the vice presidency can be effective, and I know that this president not only has entitled to my loyalty by my definition of the job, but certainly has earned it through the way he has treated me. And so there's no question that's what I am. And if some people want to say that's a signing away something of the real me, too bad. I'm not going to change.
Mr. Vice President, thank you. Thanks very much for coming in. Pleasure to have you with us today.
Nice to be with you.
Coming next, our discussion here, which is highly suitable for family viewing of all ages. And joining us will be Tom Wicker, columnist for the New York Times. In a moment.
Yesterday we were talking about food. Today we're going to talk about where it comes from. Does anybody know? Jill?
It comes from the grocery store.
Well, yes, but before that, anybody else? Andy?
Food comes from the farmers who grow it. And all the other people who help turn it into the food that we eat every day.
Okay.
That's not. Did you know
agriculture is something we can all be proud of. It's America's biggest industry, with assets equal to 70% of those of all the manufacturing corporations in the country. It's also our largest employer. 1 of every 5 workers, over 23 million people, help put food on our tables. And American agriculture is the most productive system of its kind in the world. Not only do we spend less for food than any other country on earth, we also produce enough surplus each year to export over $30 billion worth of food and feed ingredients.
That's very good. How do you know so much about food?
Well, my dad's a great teacher. Hey, Tammy! Hey, Dad!
Food is so abundant and so affordable in this country that we often take it for granted. Fortunately, a lot of other people don't.
John Houseman for the investment firm of Smith Barney.
Chippendale, made by hand. You can't mass-produce good investment advice either. You can't slap a label on it and ship it out. Investing is personal, as much art as science. At Smith Barney, they know this in their bones. Things well made are worth more. Smith Barney. They make money the old-fashioned way. They earn it.
They agree. It's up to you to vote. Then watch your vote count with Peter Jennings, David Brinkley, and the people of ABC News. Proven first, fast, and accurate with election results. Tuesday.
Well, we're all looking forward to Tuesday night. We'll all be there. I'll be here. On the air, that is. I want to ask you first, before the time runs out and we use that as an excuse for weaseling out of it, how many electoral votes would you guess the Republicans and Democrats will get? Tom?
Well, I am not going to try to guess the precise number, but I think it's
Why not?
fairly well, because I haven't totaled them up that way. But I think the Republicans will win a significant victory in the Electoral College, a big victory, let me put it that way. I'll stick my neck out, however, and say that I think the popular vote is going to be closer than most of the polls suggest. As you know, they could get only, say, 51% of the vote and still carry 45 states. So I think we're going to have a somewhat closer popular vote than suggested, but a big Republican victory in the Electoral College.
Sam?
Well, I'll stick my neck out and say it's not going to be a 50-state sweep. I think Mondale, in the final analysis, will probably carry his home state of Minnesota, although at the moment the polls show Mr. Reagan ahead. I think he may take Hawaii, and he's going to have the District of Columbia. So what's that, 522? Something like that for the Reagan-Bush ticket?
Something like that. George?
517.
500?
and 17.
Well, that leaves 21. Where did they go?
District of Columbia and one of these 10 electoral vote states, Minnesota, Oregon, maybe Washington, something like that.
Okay. All right. Now, my next question is, and I think it's more interesting than these statistics because they're wildly very... You know, the Electoral College distorts a presidential victory enormously.
Yes, that's what it exists
Well, that
to
was
do.
the idea of it,
Yeah.
yes, in the first place. But it makes, as Tom said, you can get 51% of the vote and win 40-odd states.
Well, actually, it's not just the Electoral College that does. It's the winner-take-all principle, which people mistakenly think's in the Constitution, and it isn't.
No.
Theoretically, someone can get the most popular vote and still lose the election.
Some people say that's happened twice. I think our electoral statistics in the 19th century were too unreliable to say that.
Well, we won't have to worry about it this time.
Well, here's what I want to ask. Let us assume, and the election is not only not over, it hasn't even begun, the voting. Let us assume that the Republicans win a big victory. What is going to happen to the Democrats after that? George?
Well, there'll be a spate of newspaper stories about how the Democratic Party is dying, just as there was about the Republican Party in '64. Of course, in '68, they inaugurated a Republican president. I think our parties are like mushrooms or cockroaches. Their levels of life so low and brutal that you can't stamp them out. They just are sort of held into existence. The Democratic Party will have to rethink. I'm among those who believes that the recession, the deep recession of 1981-82, hurt the Democrats because it seemed to spare them the need to rethink their approach to the country. They thought they could just go back to basics and that the events would hammer their coalition back together.
Sam, what do you think?
Well, I agree with you that in 1964 we thought the Republican Party was dead, and it wasn't. I think this time you have to look at the election and decide whether the landslide that everyone predicts for Mr. Reagan is a landslide for the Republican Party or for a man named Ronald Reagan and George Bush. And I think it's probably the latter. I don't think it's people just deciding that the Democratic Party no longer need apply on Election Day, but they're going to re-elect Ronald Reagan. And he's not going to run in 1988, and therefore I would expect the Democrats to be back, and if they have a candidate that has the most appeal, then he's going to be elected president.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of that. It seems to me if you take Ronald Reagan out of the equation now, what are you left with on the Republican side? You're left with a party that has 15 state governors, barely controls the Senate, doesn't control the House, and probably may well lose the Senate in 1976. You're also left with a party that is 86, a party that's coming into office for a second term, we assume here, facing a lot of really enormous problems with a president who is a lame duck, who is aging, who has lost the very effective majority leader in the Senate. It carried him to a lot of victories, helped carry him to a lot of victories. I think you may see it's entirely possible that the same phenomenon that George suggested about the Democrats in '82 may occur here, that the Republicans winning a big victory on the strength of Ronald Reagan think that that is something that is basic to the Republican Party, and we'll find out in Ronald Reagan's second term that they have got a sky that's black with chickens coming home to roost that they have to deal with.
I couldn't disagree with you two more. It seems to me, if you look at what has happened since 1972, two different Republican presidents have inflicted, assuming it's a landslide on Tuesday, 3 landslide defeats on the Democratic Party. People keep saying, is there a realignment coming? The realignment has occurred since 72, 76, and 80, and now 84. 3 of the 4 elections under 2 different presidents, Richard Nixon, no one's charmer, inflicted a landslide victory. Something is happening in the country that is independent of the charm, smile, and personality of Ronald Reagan.
It's independent of that charm, but not to the extent you suggest. And I think the 3 landslides do not make the case that you're trying to make, because in each one, George McGovern, 1980, Jimmy Carter and his woes, and this year, you've got special circumstances.
But that strengthens my case. 3 separate Democrats have been tried. Carter, Mondale, and McGovern, and they've all been buried.
No, conditions that year have been buried.
Well, every year is different. I mean, if you want to say there are no generalizations in history, that's one thing. But
that's right. Every year is different, George.
The term realignment, as it is now used, I think refers primarily to 1933, when Franklin Roosevelt came in, 36.
In 1896.
And brought in a huge Democratic majority in both houses of Congress, which essentially have remained there ever since.
I grant that I am talking about I think we have two party systems. We have the Republican and Democratic presidential competition and everything else. But it seems to me in the presidential competition, the realignment has occurred, and we're in the middle of a Republican era.
It's a different kind of realignment than you're suggesting, though. I tend to agree with that, because I think what's happening here, that the Republican Party, being a party of a narrower range of interests, has become a party that's more cohesive, which means that it can get elected more easily. The Democratic Party has become a party of access, in which a great many more different groups are finding their voice. That makes the Democratic Party an effective instrument, for example, for congressional elections, for state elections. It makes it much less effective for winning national power and for governing when it has it. I would suggest that we're probably going to see more Republican presidents in the future than Democratic presidents for the foreseeable future for that reason, and that Democrats will be elected primarily only when there's a Republican disaster, as Watergate. And what I'm suggesting is that the Republicans may be landsliding themselves right into a disaster for 1988.
What kind of disaster? Economic?
Economic disaster, a disaster in terms of our foreign and national security policy, disaster in terms of a president who, it seems to me demonstrably, is going to be less and less effective as the years pass, not only because of his age, but because of the fact that his power declines as a lame duck, and because I think it's very likely that he'll lose the Senate in 1986.
Well, I would agree the Democratic Party has to rethink some of the principles that, beginning with Roosevelt, it has run on. Roosevelt came in when the country was on its knees economically. It was a disaster, and for years and years, people were adjusting to trying to get themselves out of the hole. Except for the lower part of the population now, and it's a smaller part, people are out of the hole. And the Democratic Party's got to come up with a way that it can continue to be compassionate toward the least
that sort of thing is happening on both sides. I think it's a severe error on Mondale's part, for example, that in this election he did not espouse the Bradley Gephardt modified flat tax. That's a Democratic product, and it was available to him to advance, and he didn't. And
but the Republicans also are out from under a cloud. 10 years ago, a poll was taken, and it asked the voters, random sample, what words sprang to mind when you heard the word Republican? Two words came to mind: Nixon and Hoover. Now, that's not so anymore. You have a sort of successful presidency. That's why this year you have two interesting phenomena. It used to be when you'd see an ad on television, some candidate running for Congress, and he didn't mention his party, you were dead certain he was a Republican. This year I've seen lots of Democrats running without mentioning the word Democrat. Second, the Republicans have been running, and the Democrats say they're very
election night parties, because nobody who has worked in a campaign from the envelope when the winners and the losers in most of the hotels above the level of Flophouse, they have rented their ballrooms to the candidates for one office or another. They're now installing big television screens, ordering the peanuts and the popcorn, the Ritz. Their hotel, the Democrats have New Orleans jazz bands, funny hats, balloons, peanuts, while the Republicans at theirs have Lionel Hampton's band and others, and they have rented the garage, the hotel garage, carpeted it, and made it into a sort of snack bar. There's a map of the United States, 30 feet wide, with each state lighting up when it's known who won it, blue for Republicans, red for Democrats. In other cities, they'll have football, marching bands, fireworks, elephants, and Bob Hope telling jokes. Well, there's only one cloud over these scenes of revelry. It is that, sadly, half of them will gather to hear the news that they have lost, and that all of their work and struggle have left their candidates with nothing but fatigue, debt, and campaign posters to take home for souvenirs. All of us here will be here along with Peter Jennings on election night beginning at 7 o'clock Eastern Time, and after you vote, we hope you will join us. For all of us at ABC's This Week, thank you.
This Week with David Brinkley, brought to you by Archer Daniels Midland Company. For those who wish a transcript, send $3 to Journal Graphics, Post Office Box 247, Ansonia Station, New York, New York 10023. This Week with David Brinkley is a presentation of ABC News.
Election day upsets. This week, join us on Good Morning America for complete 84 vote coverage. We'll tell you who won and why, and what the outcome might mean to all of us here on Good Morning America.
I will not rest